This is The Weekly. It was this week that Russia vetoed a UN resolution to create a tribunal over the downing of flight MH17, of course, last year over East Ukraine. In the run-up to the vote, Moscow explained its position, saying this is a criminal case and is out of the jurisdiction of the United Nations.
It was prepared behind the scenes, outside the UN Security Council, and without careful consideration of the various options for a criminal investigation. My experience with tribunals on the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda cannot be called positive. They were lengthy, expensive, and subject to political pressure. It is difficult to explain how the events which a year ago were not deemed a threat to international peace and security have now, all of a sudden, become just that.
Russia is concerned that once adopted, the resolution on the MH17 crash won't allow equal access to the investigation that every state got. Also, Moscow doesn't see why a tribunal should be created when the Boeing catastrophe wasn't deemed by the UN as a global security threat. Russia put forward an alternative resolution which was rejected by the Security Council.
The experience we've had so far with UN tribunals has been most unsatisfactory. This would be a propaganda circus with all the attendant media distortions that we've seen over the past year and a half. And I think that Russia is well advised not only to veto the resolution, but to demand the establishment of a truly independent international commission of inquiry.
Right now, there are two probes. The Dutch Safety Board is due to release its final report into the cause of the crash in October, while the probe aimed at finding those behind the downing, led by the joint investigation team, won't be complete until next year. The UN resolution requests their results, quote, should be taken into consideration, but it's not clear as to what extent.
The Americans say, well, we have to deal with Russia. We have to teach them a lesson. The propaganda will be, see, the Russians are guilty. They're covering up for themselves. They won't let us have an investigation. Nobody will say, well, what happened to the report that was supposed to be done in the Netherlands? Where is this report? If the report concluded that Russia was responsible, it would have been issued a long time ago.
And the day after that UN vote across the Atlantic, Russia was accused in London of sponsoring murder. A tribunal was looking into the death of Alexander Litvinenko, the former KGB agent who later worked for British intelligence. Litvinenko died in hospital in London in 2006 after drinking tea laced with the deadly isotope polonium-210. 3 weeks previously, he had met two acquaintances from Russia at a hotel. The two are suspected of poisoning his drink. We've been getting expert reaction to the accusation made by London's Metropolitan Police.
The evidence suggests that the only credible explanation is that in one form or another, the Russian state was involved in Litvinenko's murder.
What is meant by the term Russian state? Does it mean the official government agencies, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Ministry of Defense? Does it mean President Putin? Or does it mean somebody? It could be a rogue trader, it could be a rogue FSB operative who could actually take polonium out of the state and so on, out of Russia. So you have a problem here. The term state involvement is very vague indeed and is very difficult to actually pin down.
Meanwhile, a day after Moscow vetoed a UN resolution for an MH17 tribunal, Washington slapped more sanctions on Russia over the Ukrainian crisis. Washington insisting the new restrictions are not related to the veto. The State Department says they are linked to the full implementation of the Minsk peace agreements in eastern Ukraine. RT's Gaine Chichikan asking the State Department, is something going wrong with the Minsk peace accord?
What events on the ground in Ukraine have warranted such an update of sanctions?
Today's action is there's not new sanctions. This is designed to strengthen existing sanctions.
Why now? I mean, new names, new companies added to the list.
Again, no specific date or anniversary. It's just We do this all the time.
This way, 11 individuals were added to the list, as well as 15 Russian companies. The companies include several subsidiaries of a major Russian bank, Bank, and of Russia's oil giant, Rosneft. Both companies were already under sanctions. So we understand that this sanctions upgrade does not come as a response to any new events on the ground in Ukraine.
Of course, it's not routine. It's an action of hostility. The sanctions are linked to the very aggressive policy that the United States government has been carrying out in Ukraine.
All right, just a moment here on RT International. Israel passes a law allowing the force feeding of prisoners on hunger strike. That story is coming your way after the break.
We are not talking the language of war, but I will only react to situations.
I have read the reports, but I'm not in a position to...
No, I will leave that to the State Department to comment on your latter point.
I don't want to say that.
Mr. Kerry, do you have any comments on the document? No. No comment? Thank you.
No more weasel words. When you evade a direct question, be prepared for a chase. When you throw a punch, be ready for a battle.
Freedom of speech means little without the freedom to question.